This is all with Prasanna. Shreya, you can continue.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now we begin the paper reading session. There are 8 papers and we will have 2 sessions of 4 papers. After each session, we will have a Q&A session. I would now request our first paper presenter, Navrata, of the 3rd semester, to present her paper. She will be speaking on Adharma in Mahabharata.
Am I audible and visible, ma'am?
No, you're not visible, but yes, now you're visible and audible too. Okay, I'll just interrupt here. Shreya, principal ma'am will join a bit later. Okay, so you will be ready and just look whether she is available or not, and then you will introduce her and also ask her to say something. When she
Okay,
comes.
ma'am.
Okay, Navratra, start.
Ma'am, is my PowerPoint also visible?
No, not yet.
Okay. Now?
Yes.
Okay. So, a very good afternoon to one and all present here today, respected principal, ma'am, teachers, and all my dear friends. Today, I am Navratra of 3rd semester English Honours here in front of your screen to present my paper named Adharma in Mahabharata, Injustice, Deception, and Deceit, as you all can see on your screen. Mahabharata is one of the most unique religious, mythological, historical, and philosophical epic of India. It is also known as Dharma Yuddha, fought between the Kauravas and Pandavas for the defeat of Adharma and the establishment of Dharma. Apparently, Mahabharata is one single mythological story, but we all know that it is a collection of thousands of stories, which makes it very difficult for the reader to understand. To understand when injustice was done to whom and with whom justice was done, who was fully on the path of truth and who was totally wrong. And among all such questions, some very important questions are whether the establishment of dharma was done by following the path of right, or the trickster deity did take the help of adharma for its defeat, and were the Pandavas really devotees, and was Kurukshetra war fought according to the moral and war policies? And the answer to all these questions is no. Mahabharata comprises of 18 parvas, that is 18 books. The first of the 18 books is Adi Parva, that is the book of the beginning. And with this, the story of Adharma also begins. In the Adi Parva, the great archer Karna was disowned by his own mother Kunti when he was born and was immersed in the river. Due to this act of Kunti, Karna, despite being brave, had to suffer injustice, humiliation, and misery throughout his life. Due to this reason, Panchali refused to marry Karna before a crowded assembly, calling him a Sudputra. Among the other deceptions that took place in Adi Parva, the construction of Lakshagriha is also one, which was built by Duryodhana with the plans to burn Pandavas alive. Fortunately, Pandavas escaped, and this incident of fire in Adi Parva, despite being completely filled with deception, hypocrisy, and conspiracies, is just a glimpse of the iniquity and immorality of the Kauravas. The book of the Assembly Hall of Mahabharata is also full of injustice, deception, and flan. In the Rasuya ceremony, where the insult of Sri Krishna by Shishupala and the slaying of Shishupala on the one hand shows the consequences of unrighteousness and sin, on the other hand, after all this, the organizing of the game of dice by Duryodhana, the playing of Shakuni on the behalf of Kauravas, and snatching away everything from Yudhishthira by trickery, as well as disrobing Draupadi, proves the total absence of the limits of iniquity of the Kauravas. But in midst of all these incidents, after Yudhishthira has lost everything, Everything, including himself, staking his consort, cannot be considered dharma at any cost. This act of Yudhishthira, and also according to the valid question raised by Draupadi herself, was adharma. Thus, thus, somewhere along with the Kauravas, the Pandavas were also involved in the injustice done to her, and by disrespecting a woman and her will, they have also contributed to the unrighteousness. In the end of the Sabha Parva, the Pandavas were exiled. But even after returning from exile, the story of Adharma does not end. Lord Krishna was there in this battle against evil, and he himself won this war in the favor of Pandavas using deception and deceit. There are many examples in the Mahabharata proving this statement. Krishna knew that Karna is also a brave archer like Arjuna. Along with this, he also has the armor and kundalas given by Surya. No one can defeat him in the war with all these qualities. Therefore, Shri Krishna firstly asked for his kundalas and kavach in donation from Danveer Karn by Indra, and during the war, he asked Arjuna to violate war policies and kill unarmed Karn while he was putting the wheel of his chariot with deceit. On the other hand, Bhima's grandson Barbarika was the best archer in the world. 3 arrows. Only 3 arrows were enough for him to destroy the entire army of Kauravas and Pandavas. On the battlefield, Barbarika stood under a peepal tree, the midpoint of the two groups, and announced that he would fight for the losing side. This announcement of Barbarika made Krishna worried, and he once again used deceit. In the morning, upon reaching the gate of Barbarika's camp, Shri Krishna, disguised as a Brahmin, asked him to donate his head, and Barbarika, being munificent, gave it. The son of Dronacharya, Ashwatthama, was proficient in every discipline. Krishna knew that only the father and son duo could end the war together, but he never let that happen. He brought the false news of Ashwatthama's death to Dronacharya through Yudhishthira, ordering him to say half-truth, and defeated them by deceit. Duryodhana's body was as hard as a thunderbolt due to the boon of his mother Gandhari, but his thighs remained natural due to the deceit of Krishna, and thus Bhima had torn his body in two pieces by hitting on his thighs. Throughout Mahabharata, Shri Krishna is seen conducting every incident, from Draupadi to get the boon of Saubhagyavati from Bhishma Pitama and deceiving the sun setting to defeat Jayadratha, to the killing of Drona and Bhishma in the battle. All became possible only by the policies of the trickster Krishna. If Lord Krishna had not done all this and the Pandavas had not obeyed Krishna, forgetting all their righteousness, they would never have won this battle. The outcome of this war, won by the means of deceit, deception, falsehood, and other iniquitous policies, also establishes this fact. After the end of Mahabharata war, all the heirs of Kuru dynasty were killed except Parikshit. Gandhari, being extremely distraught over the death of her 100 sons, cursed Krishna that the way her children have been destroyed because of him, in the same way his lineage would be destroyed. And due to this curse, all his heirs were killed in their mutual war. Seeing this, Balrama took Samadhi and Shri Krishna was shot in the leg by a faller, and making this a reason, he also left the body. As soon as the Yadavas and their republics came to an end, Krishna's Dwarka got submerged in the ocean. Moreover, Dhritarashtra and Gandhari went to the forest along with Kunti, Vidura, and Sanjay, and gradually all died there. And lastly, due to the unrest of the war, Pandava brothers and Draupadi handed over the kingdom to Parikshit and went to the path of heaven. Therefore, it is seen that the God himself had to use deceit and deception for the establishment of Dharma. War is never just. It always brings destruction. Hence, it is beneficial to avoid any kind of war, even if it is the battle between good and evil. Thank you so much for your patience listening. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Navrata. Now, I will request Swastik Chandra to deliver his paper on Draupadi.
Thank you, Shreyadi. Am I visible and audible?
Yes, you are.
Is my PPT visible?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So, wish you all a very good afternoon. I, Swastik Chandra of 3rd Sem English Honours, will present a paper on Draupadi of Mahabharata. I am very glad to get the opportunity to present my paper in this seminar, and I am also very much grateful to our English professor Elsie ma'am for guiding me in the preparation of this paper. So let's start. My paper is titled Draupadi, the first Indian feminist and the Kritya of the Mahabharata war. So, in modern times, the word feminism is becoming the most discussed topic all over the world. This concept arose from the West in the last century as a strong wave, which gave effective changes to the position of women in society. Indian society is also dominated by this new wave of women empowerment, but if we look into ancient Indian history of India, we will see that this feminism is not new to our country. Several strong female characters can be seen in our ancient India. But as a feminist, Draupadi was the first amongst them. With her unique feminist traits, she has a strong role in the great Indian epic Mahabharata. In Vyas's Mahabharata, Draupadi was the heroine. She was the daughter of the famous king Drupada, who was the king of Panchal. From her birth, she was unique as her birth was not a normal one. She had risen up from the Yagakunda, owing her the name Yagaseni. She later got married to the 5 Pandavas. She became the Empress of India when Yudhishthira became the Emperor of India after the Mahabharata war. Draupadi got the adjective of feminist as she was quite ahead of her time. She was also much fearless than the other women of her time. In ancient India, where women were only considered as a counterpart of men, she had the courage to establish her own rights. Her feminist traits rose to its peak in the dicing scene, when she speaks for herself and Pandavas after Yudhishthira had staked and lost her in the game of dice. Her questions on rights had silenced the most powerful and influential personalities of that time. Draupadi's knowledge, insight, and her strong personality had made her a great woman of her era. King Drupada had educated Yagaseni along with her brother Rishtadumna. The women of her time were not allowed to get educated. This education endowed a strong confidence in her. After Arjuna had won her hand in marriage and brought her back to Kunti had unknowingly given a verdict of dividing her equally among all brothers. As a result, she had to marry all the 5 Pandavas. She had accepted it, and to the degradation in status of women itself. She faced a lot of humiliation for the marriage. Karna all had a custody. She had kept her dignity in spite of her controversial polyandrous marriage. Thus, she has been placed as one of the Panchakanyas or 5 virgins in Indian history. Shamrat Yudhishthira had been invited to Hastinapur for the famous game of dicing. This dicing scene became the major turnaround point for both Pandavas and Kauravas. Draupadi had also faced the worst humiliation in this phase of her life. Yudhishthira had lost his wealth, position, kingdom, his 4 brothers, and himself also to Duryodhana and Shakuni in the game of dice. Shakuni suggests to Yudhishthira to stake Draupadi as a last poison to try to win back that they had lost. When Yudhishthira lost her too, Duryodhana commanded an usher to bring Draupadi to the assembly hall. But Draupadi commands the usher to know from Yudhishthira. Whom did he lose first, himself or Draupadi? Through this question, Draupadi puts her wisdom and logical influence in the front of the Kurus. In this part of Mahabharata, we see Draupadi, the empress, reduced to the status of a dasi, a slave woman. But simultaneously, we witness the birth of the first feminist. She is hailed as an ancient feminist, as the women folk of that time had no voice and never spoke up in front of men. They were merely held as possessions of men, but Draupadi had raised questions not only on her rights, but also on the rights of her husband and also on the ancient eternal law in front of most influential Kurus as Dhritarashtra, Bhishma, Drona, and the most powerful kings then present in the Shava. She says, is the wife of the king Dharma, whose birth matches his, a slave or a free? Speak, Kauravas, I shall abide by your answer. Draupadi's disrobing attempt by Dushasana had been prevented by Lord Krishna's supernatural intervention. While being disgraced, she openly mocked the kings and asked them how they could silently look on while she was being humiliated, though they were ostensibly learned in the proper ways of conduct. Her words totally silenced the Kurus. Draupadi's oration was so logical and true that no one dared to cut her in midway. Not only her debating skills saved the 5 Pandavas from becoming slaves of Duryodhana for a lifetime, but also to bring back the wealth which Yudhishthira had lost in the game of dice. As the Kritya or the reason of the great Mahabharata war, the role of Draupadi primarily comes up in the Shavapada. While Draupadi was being disrobed, Bhima swears that he will tear up the chest of Dushasana and will also break the thigh of Duryodhana. Similar fierce swearings was made by other Pandavas in the sequel to the dicing episode, when Draupadi was being insulted by the Kauravas. And the Pandavas vowed to take revenge for Draupadi's humiliation during the dicing episode. These oaths had ultimately led into the epic war after returning from exile of 13 years. Thus, we can see that Draupadi's humiliation had worked as a catalyst in this great war. In some of the regional versions of Mahabharata, it is found that Draupadi had vowed not to tie her open hair until she had washed it off with Dushasana's blood. But this incident is not found in Vyasa's original epic version. This shows that she had a good importance in the war, effectively placing her as a strong central feminist character in the epic. So, here our paper ends, and thank you.
Thank you, Swastik. I would now ask Dia Bodal of the third semester to present her paper on nature's essence in Kalidasa's Abhigyana Shakuntala.
Am I audible as much as visible?
Yes, you are audible and visible.
Okay. Good afternoon, Principal Ma'am and the August Assembly of Professors and everybody present in this annual Students Seminar 2021. I am Dia Boral from 3rd semester English Honors. I am going to present my paper on nature senses in Kalidasa's Avigyana Shakuntalam. Kalidasa is one of the greatest Indian Sanskrit poets and dramatists and one of the 9 gems who resided at the court of King Vikramaditya of Ujjain. His sensitivity and eloquence in treating the themes of love and the sanctity of nature are best expressed in his lengthy drama Abhigyana Shakuntalam. Shakuntala is one of the first Sanskrit writings to be translated into modern European languages. Not only the play deals with the love and marriage of Hastinapura king Dushyanta and Ashramagar Shakuntala, but also the play deals with Shakuntala's love, affection, and care for the mother nature. India has the heritage of treating nature as God. An entire chapter has been dedicated to the forest in the Indian epics Ramayana, Aranyakanda, and Mahabharata, Vana Parva. In the ancient Sanskrit literature, nature has always been revered as something sacred, and the great Sanskrit writers spurned the exploitation of nature and have motivated its preservation with love and affection. Kalidasa's most acclaimed work, Avigyana Shakuntalam, is a perfect blend of nature and human emotions. The present paper is going to be dealt with how nature is captivated as a wider spectrum in Avigyana Shakuntalam. The story of the play has been taken from Adi Parva of Mahabharata. The play portrays a vibrant and colorful romantic story with slight variation from the original story. The story is about the love between Shakuntala and King Dushyanta, his rejection of her, and their later reunion in heaven. Nature provides background for the play and even considered equal to the character. Shakuntala, the heroine of the play, is being nurtured by nature, which becomes an integral part of it. In the humans and nature share an ardent relationship which makes separation of one touching to another. The play opens in a blissful hermitage of Sechkanva, where life flourishes in the perfect harmony of nature and human life. When Hastinapura king Dushyanta has gone for a hunting expedition while chasing a deer, a disciple of Sage Kanva's hermitage requested the king that hunting is prohibited in the vicinity of the hermitage. King Dushyanta agrees. So, in the ancient times, king, even a sovereign ruler, respect the sage's words for protecting nature and animals. He also sees Shakuntala and her maidens watering plants and delighted in their body. These incidents show man's care and love for nature and a good illustration of preservation of nature. In the introductory scene of Shakuntala and her maidens, Anishua and Priyambada, King Dushyanta calls them as flower children of the wood, which shows that part of nature itself. Shakuntala, the heroine, who grows up in the lap of Mother Nature, has an innate attachment to nature. For Shakuntala, trees are her sisters, and she finds delight in their service. In the play, we could see Shakuntala's intuition that the mango tree trying to tell her something. This shows her ability to perceive the emotions of nature, as Priyamvada tells that the budding of spring creeper indicates Shakuntala's imminent marriage. For Father Kanva tells it is a symbol of her happiness. It becomes clear that nature is so integral to their life that they associate changes in nature with changes in their life. Here, the presence of humans adds to the landscape but never overpowers or controls it. Shakuntala is the daughter of nature. Nature, who speaks strictly, is her foster mother. She has, therefore, affection for every tree, for every creeper, and for every sprout. She will not drink water without herself watering the trees. She can forget herself but not the lathas in the ashram. She dares not pluck even a tender sprout despite her fondness for ornaments. The flowering season of nature is a great festival to her, which is observed in Act 4. In this context, I would like to quote a Sanskrit shloka which is said by Sage Kanva. Quote, Bho bho sannihitas tapovana taravah padumna prathama vyavasyati jalang yusmasvapiteshu, unquote. It means, quote, Hear, O hear, all you noble trees of the holy grove with indwelling divinities. She who never had a drink of water, before you had all drunk you fill, unquote. Not only the trees, but even the deer of the forest are her own children. She applies inguri oil to the mouth of a young deer, which is slightly wounded while eating darbha grasses. Just before her departure from the hermitage, she embraces the Vanajyotsna creeper and leaves it under the care of her mates. She requests her father to intimate her news of the pregnant deer. Nature gives Shakuntala many blossoms for her adornment, and by using her magic, a garment of silk which is pale bright as moonbeams for fitting this most auspicious occasion. Another noble tree poured out rose red juice to tint beautifully her tender feet. Shakuntala is also given by the woodland nymphs who are seen in the branches of other stately trees, rivaling in beauty to delicate leaf buds unfurling to offer rich gifts of rare jewels. During her departure from Kanva's hermitage, the young deer, pulling her garment, stops her from leaving the hermitage. At her departure, the female deer drop down their half-eaten morsels of darba grass. The peacocks give up their dancing, and the creepers, with the yellow leaves falling off, seem as if they are shedding tears. The deer, Dirgapanga, drinks water only from the hands of Shakuntala. The affection between nature and Shakuntala is so profound that Kanva, on the eve of Shakuntala's departure to her husband's palace, requests nature to permit Shakuntala to go to her husband's house. Then nature, too, on her part, indicates her acceptance through the sweet note of a cuckoo. Shakuntala was deserting the hermitage with painful reluctance. The bitterness of parting is not only hard, but the Holy Grove was also grieved in Act 4. I would like to quote a Sanskrit shloka uttered by Priyamvada in this context. Quote, Na kevalam tapovana viraha katara sakhi eva tvaya उपस्थित वियोगस्य तपोवनस्यापि तावत् समावस्था दृश्यते, unquote, which means, quote, the bitterness of parting is not yours alone. Look around and see how the Holy Grove grieves, knowing the hour of parting from you is near, unquote. In Act 7, the last act of Avigyana Shakuntalam, which is placed in Maricha's hermitage, Shakuntala's son, Sarvadamana, who is afterwards famous as Bharata, king of Hastinapura and the ancestor of Kauravas and Pandavas, tries to open the mouth of a lion cub to count the teeth. Hermit girls run towards him to stop his misdeed over the torturing the lion cub. So, the hermit girls of the hermitage are always careful to protect the nature and animals. Kalidasa paints the story using nature. Not only nature is just a backdrop of the play or character of the play, but nature is treated as an omnipresent and very much living entity. With his poetic genius, Kalidasa has captivated the nature in each and every form and figure, leading to a much broader spectrum. Thank you all. And my special thanks to HOD English, Mrs. Sambika Barua Chaudhary, for providing me such a wonderful guidance. And also thanks to Mrs. Suchira Sarkar, Mrs. Lisa Chatterjee Roy, and Dr. Nishi Pulugurtha for always inspiring us.
Thank you, Dia. Now, I will request Alisha Ghosh to present her paper on the topic Character of Shakuntala.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Alisha Ghosh, third semester from Department of English, and today I'm going to present my paper on character of Shakuntala in Kalidasa's Abhigana Shakuntala. Abhigana Shakuntalam is a marvelous work of the great poet and playwright Kalidasa, the brightest star in the firmament of Indian poetry. Kalidasa's imagination holds in perfect fusion of the two elements of natural beauty and human feelings. Out of the three plays of Kalidasa, Abhigana Shakuntalam is generally regarded as a masterpiece. The word Abhijana in the title signifies a token of recognition, here a ring, which is instrumental in bringing about the final recognition of Shakuntala by the king. It is a Nataka in 7 acts based on the love story of King Dushyanta and the maiden Shakuntala. Shakuntala is the heroine of the play, borrowing the theme from Mahabharata. Kalidasa made some interesting changes to the original for the dramatic effect and justifying Dusyanta's behavior. But he primarily focused on the etching of Shakuntala's characterization, which is much different from the earlier heroines of Sanskrit literature. Kalidasa presents Shakuntala as an embodiment of beauty, feminine charm, and womanhood. Kalidasa presented her as a mold of the ideal heroine of Sanskrit literature, as laid down in the text of Sanskrit dramaturgy. Shakuntala has been presented as an ideal woman like Savitri and Sita. In such a romantic design, the main aim of the dramatist is to evoke the Shringara Rasa. Shakuntala possesses ideal beauty and grace. Unlike other heroines such as Urvashi and Malvika, Shakuntala is a child of nature. She has been brought up in the lap of nature and is more close to earthly reality. Shakuntala is a unique creation of Kalidasa who transcends the erotic. Nature also plays an important role in her life. Shakuntala, the heroine of the play, was born of the Apsara Menka and the royal sage of Vishwamitra and abandoned at birth. Kanva finds her in the forest and adopted her as his daughter. Shakuntala is portrayed as an exceptional beauty that is loved by everyone in the hermitage, including the animals, trees, and plant life. And this exceptional beauty is what Dushyanta attracts in the first place. However, Shakuntala is not a mere beauty, but a pillar of strength and patience also. She is the embodiment of Indian womanhood who is ready to make sacrifices when society turns indifferent and hostile too. The emotional range is infinite in epic narrative, but while intermeshing of the emotions, we can see the image of Shakuntala undergoes a transformation. In the play, Kalidasa's interest lies mainly in portraying the love between Dushyanta, a sophisticated and noble king, and an innocent girl. The journey moves from hermitage, and the bond between the duo is strengthened through separation and suffering. In other versions, especially Mahabharata's Shakuntala is a woman in a patriarchal society, and she seems to have carefully thought the role of wife or mother and son in a society dominated by men such as Dushyanta during those 6 years when she lived forgotten by her husband. When she goes to Dusyanta's court, she was pregnant, but her behavior at the court shows that she has not lost her strength or hopes for her son. Also, her words to Dushyanta are no longer those of a young woman innocent and happily wandering through her father's hermitage. In Kalidasa's play, Shakuntala, after cruel rejection by the king, is stunned and filled with shame and sorrow, followed by anger. There appears to be highlighted her patience and her verbal skill in her characterization. Instead of begging or whining the king, she boldly tells Dushyanta of the future implications and results of his false action in Act 5. Quote, "Oh, great king, even though you do recognize me, why do you say, I do not know you? You speak thus carelessly as another, a low born villain, might speak." Unquote. In her strength echoes in her words after her rejection. Shakuntala's skills of argument and of drawing upon associations of memory can be seen in the play when she is in court, is pregnant, and the king refuses to recognize or accept her. In Kalidasa's play, Dushyanta blames her for her untrustworthy character and her parentage and makes insulting remarks to Shakuntala that women are born cunning. This unrighteous action of Dushyanta draws out an angry response, and one can see the Prativadi Shakuntala's head held high and with her eyes flashing answers the rejection in Act 5. Quote, "You point out faults of others, even though they are as small as mustard seeds, but you do not notice your own faults, which are as big as wilbur fruits." Unquote. And she continues in Act 5, quote, "My birth Therefore, Dushyanta is far higher than yours. Yours place is earth, but mine is in the sky. Unquote. Even though Dushyanta does not recognize her, her reaction is different. She is not angry and does not shout at the king, but says she has caused her situation herself because she is the one who has trusted the king, and she does not beg for pity from the king but weeps and cries out. Kalidasa has also shown the virtues of Shakuntala as she was the child of nature. For Indian nationalism, it was Marika's ashram who epitomized the virtues of a good Hindu woman. Curiously, the link between the two ashrams is Shakuntala, a woman who was a child of the first ashram and personification of innocence. She has now been through the travel of patriarchal Indian society, where women have been treated as men's subordinate, and an unrecognized marriage and a motherhood to arrive at an eventual recognition in the second ashram. Her virtues, forbearance, and kindness are clearly seen when, after so much suffering meted out by the king, she meets the king but does not hesitate to welcome him and referring him as Aryaputra. Kalidasa shows through Shakuntala that true reconciliation comes through equality and mutual respect. In doing so, Kalidasa creates an unprecedented heroine who redefines representation of women in Indian classical drama. Kalidasa has done his job of playwriting with extraordinary talent. He has used an existing piece of narrative and elaborated it in a fully grown play where characters have beautiful details and mannerism. All the characters of this play, and especially Shakuntala, who is so close to the majority of modern Indian women, whose strength lies in her deep and powerful emotions, which fits the strength of mind. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alicia. Now, these four papers are open for any questions, comments, and suggestions. Please unmute yourself and ask, or please type them in the chat box.
Does anyone have questions for these four papers? Well, there don't seem to be any questions.
No, ma'am.
Yeah, if there are no questions, maybe Shreya, we can go on to the next session.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you all. We now move on to our second session. I will request Dipanchan Mondol to present his paper on Mrichagatika, a thematic analysis.
Hello, am I audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My humble pranams to Honorable Principal Ma'am, respected professors of English Honors Department. Welcome you all, my seniors, my batchmates, and lovely juniors. Here we go. Mrichakatika, a thematic analysis. Mrichakatika is a prakarana that is attributed to the authorship of Sudrakpa, a king who is believed to have lived between the 3rd and 5th century BC. 3 Sanskrit plays are attributed to him: Mrichakatika, the little clay card; Veena, Vasavadatta, and a short one-act monologue, Padma Prabhritaka. Mritshakatika is set in Ujjain, the capital of the Pradyota dynasty ruled by the king Palaka, who ruled in the first quarter of 5th century BC, believed to be a development on Vasa's incomplete five-act play Charudatta. It is one of the gems of Indian classical literature. Mritshakatika is a rich document in terms of depicting various factions of the society and several forms of emotion, which makes this a director's delight. Following are the underlying themes in the play as I understood them. Love. Love is the central theme of the play, which is apparent in two different manifestations. Firstly, the love between Charudatta and Vasantasena that sets the tone of the story and the ways they feel for each other. A love that is pure and unadulterated. Despite Vasantasena being a courtesan, a person generally supposed to be of ill repute, Charudatta, a Brahmin, falls in love with her. The story of Sarvilaka and Madanika portrays love too. Justifying the act of stealing sounds creepy, and Sarvilaka also had the thought of killing those who were sleeping, and had it not been for Maitreya's conversation with him, he would certainly have killed them. However, that aside, Sarvilaka makes an honest effort to end the bondage of the woman he dearly loves and marries her as soon as she is free. Now I shall focus on poverty. Being excessively generous makes Charudatta experience poverty and all the piercing truths and problems that come along with it. His friends abandon him, and he who once helped others is in need of help himself. The story shows how poverty brings out the true colors of people who claim to be well-wishers during good times and desert in moments of crisis. Without money, people become more susceptible to injustice, as they do not have enough influence over others to prove themselves. In the play, Charudatta was convicted for a crime which he did not commit. His poverty made him an easy victim. After that, jealousy. Jealousy is present in the character of Sansthanaka. He lusts after Vasantasena, and when he realizes that she is in love with Charudatta, he becomes furious and frames him falsely in a crime. He almost kills Vasantasena, for he could not bear the woman he wanted for himself to be in the arms of another man. Now let us look another aspect, friendship. Friendship is displayed on various occasions in the play, the most prominent being that between Sarvilaka and Aryaka, and Charudatta and Maitreya. Sarvilaka is newly married, with a girl for whom he committed the crime of stealing from a Brahmin. But no sooner than he heard about his friend Aryaka's arrest, he vowed to help him. And he successfully did. This shows the strong bond between the two, who were both rebels in their own way. Likewise, the friendship between Charudatta and Maitreya is also quite strong. Maitreya comes across as a very loyal and helpful friend as he goes out of his way to help his friend who is in love with a courtesan. One thing that has been among the most important elements of the monarchic times is loyalty, which is clearly evident in Mritshakatika as well. Let us come to the next point, injustice. Injustice has been plaguing societies for centuries, and a perfect example is seen in this play. Charudatta is sentenced for a crime that he did not commit, while the real culprit almost went free. Being a close associate of the tyrant king, Sansthanaka could use all his resources to prove that Charudatta was the murderer. And if it had not been for the return of Vasantasena, Charudatta would have surely been executed. Even after Sansthanaka's slave informs that it was his master who killed the courtesan, no one believed him, for justice apparently is only for the privileged class. The theme of injustice depicted in the play can be found even in today's world, where rapists and murderers from influential backgrounds often go free, while those from the vulnerable groups spend years and, in some cases, decades in prison without committing any crime. This makes the theme even more relatable. Politics. There is also a political change in the city, and King Palaka was overthrown and killed by the rebels. Aryaka, the leader, becomes the new king. He restores Charudatta to his former position of fortune and eminence, and also pardons the villain Sansthanaka, who had already been arrested. And last but not the least, hope. All is well that ends well. And this is what we get in the end of the play. Sansthanaka does whatever he could, but still he became an example of crime never pays. Charudatta and Vasantasena reunite. We also get hope that if we help someone in their difficult times, the person could be of help during our crucial times. Vasantasena repaid the 10 gold coin loan of the Semper, who became the monk. And in the end, the monk saved her life in the park after Sansthanaka strangled her. Similarly, Aryaka reinstated the fortunes of Charudatta and made him an important official in his court, because the poor Brahmin had helped him escape the gods. Sudraka's Mritshakatika is a masterpiece in its own right and has a universal appeal to it. It is one of those Indian literary works in Sanskrit and Prakrit that has been much celebrated in the West because of its plot structure, and also remains a prominent drama in Sanskrit, making it a contemporary classic even in today's times, as it is widely translated, adapted, and performed. That is all I have to say about. This brings me to the end of my paper. Thank you for listening patiently till the end.
Thank you, Dipanjan. Now, I would request Tamanna Das of the third semester to present her paper on Mritshakatika as a prakarana.
Ma'am, am I audible and visible? Hello?
Yes.
Am I audible and visible?
Yes, yes.
So, good afternoon everyone. I am Tamanna Das from third semester English Honours, and today I am going to represent my paper on the text Mritchakatika, and my topic is Mritchakatika as a Prakarana. Prakarana refers to one of the 10 kinds of dramatic plays, Dasrupa, according to the Natya Shastra. These different kinds of dramas are considered to have originated from the various style which is discussed the same work. The Prakarana type of drama includes the following styles: verbal, Bharati, grand, Satyavati, and energetic Aravati. Among the 10 kinds of plays, Natya, the second species of play, is Prakarana, which resembles the Nataka in all respects except that it takes a rather less elevated range. Its plot is original and drawn from real life, and the most appropriate theme is love. The hero may be a Brahmin, a merchant, a minister, a priest, an officer of the king, or a leader of the army. The female characters include a courtesan and depraved woman of good family. But the courtesan should not meet the hero when he is in the company of a lady of high family, and if the courtesan and respectable ladies must meet on any account, they are to keep their language and manners undistorted. It is because of this and other features the Prakarana has been called a Bojva comedy or comedy of manners of a rank of people below royalty. Shudraka's Mritchakatika, among many other ancient Indian classical plays like Bhavabhuti's Malati Madhava, is a well-known example of the Prakarana. Shudraka, in his unique creation, Mritchakatika, weaves together history with his imagination. The play is about the love of a courtesan and a Brahmin, which cleverly includes a subplot that seamlessly brings in the history of the city Ujjaini. Shudraka's Mritchakatika is one of the most famous Prakarana plays. Such a play could be described as one that is partly a creation of the author's own fancy and imagination and is partly derived from the history of some historical account. There are no mythological elements in such a play, neither is it based on epic material or ancient legendary accounts. Rather, such a play is based on the stark reality of time of the composition. Its plot is made up of diverse elements, no doubt with a historical background, but framed and presented by the author's imagination and inventive skills. Shudraka has filled his play with incidents that are common and various kinds of characters as well. The play deals with lovers, politicians, and villains found indulging in gambling, stealing, drinking, and even teasing. Such varied matters are rolled into one by the dramatist's genius and reveals his creative and inventive power. This type of the drama of invention was somehow curiously written and performed. It was subordinated to the heroic drama drawn for the classical and mythological materials. However, this play stands out as the most potential creation of ancient Sanskrit drama artistry. Mritchakatika is a long play based on the story of love of Charudatta, a prominent, though unfortunately poverty-stricken citizen of the city of Ujjain, and Vasantasena, an exquisitely beautiful, good, and sincere courtesan of the city. The plot of the play, though mainly based on the love between Charudatta and Vasantasena, has numerous twists and turns. The plot of the play, varied incidents, quite commonplace and contemporary, are brought in to complicate this theme of love. There are gamblers and thieves and intrigue makers with incidents of theft, mistaken identities, and the subplot of the political confrontation of the tyrannical king Palaka and the rebels determined to oppose and overthrow him. Ultimately, the cruel king is deposed and the common man, a shepherd by profession, Aryaka, becomes the new king of Ujjain. The plot of the play is also complicated by the malicious villain Sakara, the brother-in-law of the king. His villainous act leads to the trial of Charudatta on the charge of murder of Vasantisena as he is found in possession of her jewels. The things become quite complicated and difficult as a death sentence is pronounced on Charudatta. However, it is soon revealed that Vasantasena is not dead but became unconscious by Sakara's strangulation in anger as she refused to give herself up to him to appease his sexual appetite. Saved and guided by the Buddhist monk, she appears in the scene of execution of Charudatta. As the whole truth is known, Charudatta is released and Sakara is arrested for his villainous intrigues. The plot of the play has a dramatic turn with the sudden change of the political scenario. The wicked King Palaka is deposed and the new King Aryaka proves instrumental in the restoration of Charudatta's lost fortune. Vasantasena too is released from her duty as the courtesan. Mritchakatika is quite interestingly packed with highly dramatic material. Incidents follow in a sequential way, and the dramatist handling of the plot and the play is not merely inventive but also apt and pleasing. The play is praiseworthy for documenting contemporary social and political conditions and representing individual emotions and feelings, actions and interactions. Finally, through his stirring and dramatic material, the dramatist succeeds in propagating the message that crime does not ultimately pay and that true love and virtue eventually triumph. As Dr. Ryder rightly remarks, Mritchakatika displays three admirably characteristics of its author: his variety, his skills in drawing characters, and his humor. Sudraka's play Mritchakatika indeed is an amalgamation of variety of themes and aspects in terms of both character and plot. The characters are taken from contemporary society and their portrayal is true to the then society. Mritchakatika succeeds as a prakarana by also mirroring the social image of the age. And yet, its ingenious plot is centered upon the love affair of the two characters that adds up to its originality, making it a truly creative work. Thus, drawing upon history and contemporary society to create an artistic masterpiece, Sudraka's play Mritchakatika becomes one of the finest examples of a prakarana. Thank you all, and my special thanks to Nishi ma'am for guiding me and also the other professors for providing me such a beautiful opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamanna. Madhuti Mojumdar of the third semester will speak on the topic Narrative Techniques in Kadambari. I will request Madhuti to begin to read her paper.
Good afternoon to everyone. I am Madhuti Mojumdar, student of third semester.
Just a minute, Madhuti. I think the principal ma'am is there. I think
I'm here. I've joined you several times from different seminars.
Okay. Could we request you to say a few words?
Yeah. That will be better. Yeah, that will be better. Okay, students, it's very nice to hear from you. Every year we do this, and the department is progressing further doing this every year with the senior students. And I think the juniors are also better. Hopefully they learn from this. And it's a nice one. I've heard only two of you. Actually, I was there in the NSS unit seminar. Then again, I joined the chemistry one. And then before chemistry, I joined yours. I saw you all were engaged, so I came back, and then again joined here. So today, so many overlapping seminars are going on, but it's a nice one that all are engaged in gathering knowledge, and I hope the students, they'll be benefited who are presenting here. They'll really be benefited in future that they are getting a platform to present themselves and their writings, and their skillful writings rather, if they have been guided by their mentors. So thanks to all the mentors of the department who are guiding the students of this college, of the English department, and wish you all carry on this way. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I will request Madhuti to begin to read her paper.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Madhuti Majumdar, student of third semester. I am going to present my paper 1, Narrative Technique on Kadambari. Bana Bhatta is a towering figure in classical Sanskrit literature. He belonged to 7th century India and authored Kadambari and Harshacharita. He won the king's high regard and became the court poet of King Harshavardhana. Bana died before finishing the romantic fiction Kadambari, and it was completed by his son Bhushan Bhatta. It is conventionally divided into Purvabhaga, or earlier part, written by Bana Bhatta, and Uttarbhaga, or later part, by Bhushan Bhatta. The prose romance Kadambari is named after the heroine Kadambari. Bana Bhatta opens the narrative by seeking the favor of gods so that he can introduce its new subject and phraseology, its vivid description and similes. Shudraka, the king of Vidisha, is gifted a parrot by a beautiful Chandala maiden. The king is curious about this bird, which talks and behaves like a human being. After having some morsels, he begins to narrate his story to Shudraka. The parrot, Vaishampayan, lived in the Vindhya forests with his aging father in the hollow of a huge shalmali tree. One day, many hunters overran to the forest and killed an enormous number of animals. His father was dragged out from his hollow and killed, but Vaishampayan could escape. He was rescued by sage Hari and given refuge in the hermitage of sage Jabali. The sage comments that the parrot is experiencing the fruit of his own misconduct of his previous birth. Now, Jabali begins to narrate the tale of Vaishampayan, which brings us to the story of Kadambari. Once in the kingdom of Avanti, there ruled King Tarapir from his capital city of Ujjaini, who had no child. Later, a son was born who was named Chandrapira. To his chief minister, Shukanasha, a son was born too who was named Vaishampayan. They grew up and were educated together and became inseparable friends. After Chandrapira becomes the heir apparent, he sets out to conquer different kingdoms with a huge army. After conquering many lands, the army camps at Subarnapur at the foothills of the Himalayas. One day, while chasing a Kinnar couple, Chandrapira reaches Lake Achoda. Here he meets an ascetic Gandharva maiden, Mahashweta. As he becomes curious about her, Mahashweta now begins to tell her own story. Within Jabali's story, another narrator takes up a new story. Mahashweta, the daughter of a Gandharva, once met a young ascetic Pundarik here, near the lake, who was the son of goddess Lakshmi and the sage Swetaketu. Pundarika too fell in love with Mahashweta, but he dies of his love. His body was taken away to the land of Moon. Mahashweta is asked by a god to wait for Pundarik who in another birth will be united with her. Hence, Mahashweta has been living and waiting here in the forest, renouncing all worldly pleasures. Meanwhile, Pundarika is reborn as Vaishampayan and the moon god as Chandrapira. After the narration of Mahashweta is over, she sets off for Mount Hemakuta to meet her friend Kadambari, the daughter of a Gandharva king. Chandrapir also accompanies her. In Hemakuta, Chandrapir and Kadambari meet and fall in love with each other. But he has to go back to his own kingdom, leaving behind Vaishampayan in charge of his army. One day, Vaishampayan arrives at Lake Achoda and finds Mahashweta there. He professes his love for her, but by a curse of angry Mahashweta, he dies to be reborn as the parrot Vaishampayan. Jabali continues with the fate of Chandrapir. As he comes back from his own kingdom to meet Kadambari, now with Mahashweta, he learns of the death of his dear friend. Chandrapira drops down unconscious. Heartbroken Kadambari, who plans self-immolation, is told by a divine voice to preserve the body of Chandrapir carefully. After a curse is over, he will be alive again. Here the narration of Jabali comes to an end. Parrot Vaishampayan tells King Shudraka that while he grieved over his degradation, Kapinjan, friend of his earlier birth as Pundari, arrived at Jabali's hermitage. He informed him that his curse will soon be over. The parrot sets off flying northwards, but midway he was caught by Chandalas, and the Chandala maiden has brought him to King Shudraka. Here the narration of the parrot is over, and again the author takes up. At the request of Shudraka, the Chandala maiden explains to them that she is Lakshmi and Vaishampayan is her son. King Shudraka is the reincarnation of Chandrapira. As Shudraka now remembers everything of his past life, he pines for Kadambari and dies. The dead body of Chandrapira, preserved by Kadambari, now comes alive. They are ultimately united. Pundarik too descends from the land of moon to be united with Mahashweta. This romantic fiction has an intricate plot, probably an adaptation of Gunadhya's Brihat Katha. The narration proceeds in a succession of nested frames, retelling by a parrot of a story which was told to it by a sage. In order to maintain the suspense in the story without disturbing the unity of plot, Bana has implemented several unique techniques: the frame, the prism, and the time machine. It is also to be noted that the storyteller is named Vaishampayan, who is the major narrator in the great Mahabharata as well. The whole story becomes a unit as narrated by a few characters, and the characters narrate their own tale. This unboxing device of a story within another story, one story continuing another story, is common in Sanskrit literature. Here the peculiarity is that the same story is put into the mouth of different characters, part by part. All the parts taken together make a whole. The technique called time machine shows an indigenous idea, a time travel by virtue of mere narration of the story. The action moves between past and present. Both narrator and the prime listener, the parrot and king, Shudraka, are unaware of their real identity. It is revealed by goddess Lakshmi at the end. During the course of the story, they have traveled to myriads of time zones effortlessly, but they are ignorant of their true relevance to the main story. Only at the end, it is exposed that they are two pivotal characters. The reader, too, is taken by surprise. Kadambari contains elaborate poetic descriptions, rhetorical devices, and a wealth of keenly observed detail. Quite often, dialogues are used also, but it is the narrative technique that makes Kadambari unique. Thank you.
Thank you, Madhuti. I would like to request the last speaker of today's event, Rashmika Chaudhary, to deliver a speech on contemporary society in Kadambari.
Good afternoon. I am Rashmita Chaudhary from Arts and English Honors. Today I am here to present contemporary society in Kadambari. Kadambari is a romantic narrative or of semi-with literature. It was written by Bana Bhatta, who was the court poet or Shabhakavi of Harshavardhana. Bana died leaving the narrative incomplete, and it was completed by Bana's son Bhushana Bhatta or Pulinda Bhatta. The earlier part or Purva Bhaga was written by Bana, while the latter part or Uttar Bhaga composed by Bhushana Bhatta. In the marvelous texture of Kadambari, the world of men and demigods, natural and supernatural, happily blend together. The story gradually unfolds as different narrators narrate their own stories in succession, consisting of many episodes. That is the mirror of society. Unlike many other texts, Kadambari quite successfully portrays this contemporary Indian society of which historical evidences exist. As Bana was the court poet of King Harshavardhana, also a great admirer of Gupta parrot, we find the time and its reflected in the text. The stories of King Shudra Tarapir show the prevailing monarchic system. The sovereign then functioned as and administrator role, which involved both political and religious power. In the beginning of Kadambari, we learn that misery, violence, anger, were keep in Shuddra's kingdom. Bana portrays a peaceful, wealthy Vidisha, which was the capital city. The fictional King Tarapit's son Chandrapit in many ways resembles second Chandragupta. In the love story of Kadambari and Chandrapit, there is a shadow of Kalidasa's Vikramorboshi, which is the love story of King Vikramaditya. Some critics find resemblance between King Harshavardhana and Tarapit. There are also some similarities between the characters of Tarapit and Emperor Samudragupta. From the line 19 to 25 of Allahabad, the policy of Samudragupta towards other kings under him. King Harshavardhana also followed the policies of Samudragupta. In the description of Tarapit, find tendencies also. The mention of Chandala maiden, Brahmin priest, shows the contemporary Varnashram or caste system. The four basic categories are Brahmin, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. The parrot narrates that he used to live in the Vindhya forest with his aging father on a shalmali tree. One day the forest was overrun by Shavaras. The description of the parrot Vaishampayana portrays the life of the Shavaras. People who live in the forest killed animals for food and not as civilized as people of villages and cities. Main trauma that a childless family goes through was evident from King Tarapit's wind Virajati. To win a son worships Lord Bala. The temple of Lord Mahakala stands the outskirts the city of Ujjaini, which was the capital of Tarapit's kingdom Avanti. The same religious practices performing penances are also found in Mahabharata and Ramayana. Special education for royal boys, Chandrapit and Vaishampayana reflects the contemporary Indian education system. During this period, everyone was not as privileged to be a part of those educational institutions. The boys only from the Brahmin family could enter the Gurukul. It was only the boys of higher castes and royal families who could avail this mainstay of education. Brahmin students lived with their guru in the ashram for years. Royal students learned techniques of warfare along with the subject. According to description of Kadambari, the royal palaces were divided into several portions, like the court, pleasure garden, public and private spaces, central secretariat, and so on. Separate stables for horses and houses for elephants were also present as the outside palace. Worthy, as it was indeed an era of war with efficient administration, rich treasury, and vast territory. The role of Chief Minister Suknasha in this context was very important. He was the central figure in maintaining alliance with all other kings. He was the pivotal spokesperson for King Tarapit. He also used to operate an intricate network of spies all over the state and neighboring states as well to ensure the safety and security of the central administration. Bana has presented a details of coronation ceremony of Chandrapit, which was attended by the all kings who were Tarapit's ally. After the ceremony, the crown prince was introduced to all the kings and started the great rally with several kings and others. From the Germany. Another important aspect of is the description of our heritage comes to the of look see harmony in the Shaman hermit and the worship study of deep in a great the beings linger like birds on the crest of hills, presented a picture of heaven upon the earth, where the stories of Jabali or Ishpana's life was narrated. Only the contemporary social life depicted in the romantic shop nature moves in state, rooted romantic love transcends the bound of mortal existence. In truth, consecutive life cycles paired of lovers which unite in the fulfillment of love.
Thank you, Rashmika. Now we will begin the question and answer session of the second half. Do unmute yourself and ask or type in the chat box.
Since there are no questions, could I begin? This is addressed to anybody. Anyone can answer this question. I was just thinking of how, when you are reading these texts, in the 21st century, how do you react to these texts? I mean, do you find it still interesting or contemporary reading these texts? Do you find any kind of resonances with contemporary times? Are you able, in other words, to relate to these very ancient Indian classical texts in present times? And any one of you could answer, all the 8 paper readers could answer this particular question.
Yes, ma'am, we could relate. Ma'am, as I have read the paper on Mahabharata, we can see that in 21st century also, Mahabharata and Ramayana, we all know that these are 2 unique epics of India which can never be underestimated. And moreover, the way Dharma and the war between this and the battle, those wars were so, huge that these kind of wars cannot be seen in today's time, but we can relate the trickery, we can relate the all the sins, the unrighteousness of the people, the disrobing scene of Draupadi. We all can relate by all these in today's day also. So these are so much relatable, and we can definitely feel the resonances.
Thank you, Navratna. Could anybody else from the 5th semester or 1st semester or even the 3rd semesters, it need not be a question, it could be a comment also. So
Ma'am, I have learned from Abhijnana Shakuntalam that how nature is protected, how Shakuntala protected the nature very beautifully, how she loved the animals and nature. So it is very enriched.
Thank you for that input. I completely understand what you're trying to say about the kind of relationship between nature that you find there is something that we all need to be aware of. Thank you so much for your input.
And especially these days when people are becoming more and more conscious about environment, preservation of the environment, how do you look at it from this angle? How would you look at Shakuntala, the way Kalidasa has treated nature? Dia? Or anybody?
Ma'am, Shakuntala is the daughter of nature, and she protects and care for the nature.
Ma'am, I also want to add something here, that not only Shakuntala, though yes, we can say that as mentioned in Abhijnana Shakuntalam, Shakuntala is totally the daughter of nature, but in some sense, we all are the daughters and sons and the children of nature. So the way Shakuntala respects the nature, the way she wants to protect it, we also have to do the same way, because we also have to respect our Mother Earth, our environment.
And can you connect between Shakuntala and Kadambari, the winter forest, the hermitage, where there is beautiful passages of natural description and the interaction between man and nature, and a very organic living, a picture of a very organic living, man, animals, plants.
Ma'am, I think in both the texts, either it's Kadambari or Shakuntala, or we can say that in any other text where there is a beautiful description of nature, I think we can also feel that if we go to, like, we have many centuries and many things which are totally in the form of nature, like forests and gardens. When we feel that there is no, if we relate it to the 21st century, when we feel that there is no pollution in 21st century and everything we are living on in the midst of trees and plants and the flowers and fruits, and so we can also, we can also be overwhelmed with all these that we even can write a text on it.
And a very interesting topic, another very interesting topic would be the Vindhyas of 7th century, the forest of Vindhyas, Sub-Vindhya area. And today, the steady deforestation and the consciousness about, well, reforestation. So a comparison between 7th century India, 21st century India.
Surely, ma'am.
Of course, the Google map that they show us, how steadily deforested, have become bare of greenery. So all these things. This can be a very interesting point. I would suggest if some of you come forward and take up this topic.
Ma'am, our ancestors are very much aware about the nature, and we must learn about that.
Could we have any other questions from the students? 5th semester, 1st semester?
Yes, 5th semester students. Well, you read all these papers when you were in 1st semester. Hope you haven't forgotten everything. So, do you have an observation to make? If not, any question?
There are no questions, Shreya.
No, ma'am.
Shreya, I think you can continue with what you have to do.
Thank you all. I would like to thank our principal ma'am, the IQAC coordinator, faculty members of the college, all the teachers of the English department, and the non-teaching staff of the college. A big round of applause to the 3rd semester students for working hard on their respective papers. Also, to all the students of the English department, thank you for being a part of this event. Thank you.
Okay, so we can end here.
Yeah, that is the end of it all.
Thank you, everyone. We can have a photo.